Greetings. Hello, it's Chapo. It's Will here, coming at you with a bonus episode. And joining me today is the screenwriter and author Jerry Stahl, who you might remember from such films as Permanent Midnight and Bad Boys 2. But no, he is here to discuss his... You are here today not to discuss those films, but you're here to discuss your extremely funny and extremely dark new memoir, 999, which is basically an account of the worst vacation any man has ever voluntarily taken. But Jerry, it's more than that. What is 999? And did you describe your vacation to us?
Yes, vacation in the very loose sense of the word. I was I don't know if you can relate to this, man. I was mightily depressed, despairing for the world, myself, my psyche, everything. And I decided that when you are super depressed, what better remedy than just go somewhere where depression is absolutely appropriate and complete despair is pretty much what you should be feeling. So long story short, I was able to con the gentlefolk at Vice magazine to send me on a bus tour to do a 6-part series, a bus tour of the Holocaust. So I basically rode with a bunch of strangers, many of whom who had never seen a Jew, for 19 days to the concentration camps at Auschwitz, Buchenwald, and Dachau.
But so Jerry, I mean, obviously everyone wants to know, you've been to all the death camps in Central Europe. What's the best one? You know, you did the whole bus tour, but a lot of people, they might have time for that. So if you have to see one death camp, what's the experience to go for?
It's really a tough call, Will. I think it depends what you're after. I mean, Buchenwald, just a hell of a snack bar. You know, they have a real cafeteria with like sit-down service. Auschwitz, not so much. It's more like your calzones, your pizza, and Dachau sort of halfway in between. So if you're going for just the culinary treat of it all, I guess you'd have to go with Buchenwald.
Well, I mean, I want to get into the cafeteria and gift shop experiences, all of these death camps. But I mean, I think probably one of the most jaw-dropping details from the book is that at the Auschwitz Cafeteria, they have pizza ovens.
They do.
So you can get
pizza
little, like the classic sort of a Neapolitan-style pizza. It's fresh of wood burning.
Yeah, it's a very good question. I didn't get that close. You know, I was hedging my bets and kind of standing in the doorway because there were a bunch of sort of gruff German and Polish people foraging ahead of me to get their slice. But insert irony here. I mean, what can I say? You know, it's a pizza oven.
Well, I mean, this whole thing has a very much like a first is tragedy, then is farce feel to it. Because, you know, like if the Holocaust is the event in like the modern era that really most troubles our notion of an ordered, just, or meaningful universe, then the Holocaust tourism, now that it's become, you know, like because it's the worst event that we can think of in the modern world, the tourism industry, and now that these places are sites where you can pay to visit and go to a gift shop to, really pushes that first is tragedy, then is farce cliche well past even meaninglessness. And in case that you perhaps you're skeptical of this, all I can say to you, listener, is you've never been mistaken for Kramer from Seinfeld walking out of a gas chamber, which happened to you.
It happened. Yeah, there are a couple rather unseemly events that happened to me upon entering Auschwitz. I was staggering out of the oven, so to speak, after my first experience. And I hear these, I think they were young Filipino women, maybe 16, 17, and they're just like, Kramer. I won't even attempt to do the accent justice. And I turn around, and it turns out these young ladies were under the grotesquely mistaken idea that I was Kramer, that I was Michael Richard, and they wanted to get a selfie with me. So on a couple levels, this is fairly disturbing. I mean, A, what is the etiquette for a death camp selfie? And B, I'm being mistaken for Michael Richard. And C, I'm thinking how horrible it is that I'm being mistaken for Michael Richard.
So like, so instead of thinking like, oh my God, like a million people died here, but you're like, actually, like, I'm really pissed off because these kids think I'm Kramer. They think
I'm
like
a little
Michael
self-conscious. So what do? Emily Post didn't cover it. So I just plunged ahead and figured the path of least drama was to just go ahead and get the selfie and, make them happy. Whereupon I look over and see the rest of the people in my tour group looking at me like, "The fuck is wrong with you?" You know.
Well, I mean, Holocaust selfies have become kind of a genre, and they become sort of controversial because there's these I guess very well-meaning American teenagers who go in these tour groups like you, and then they're just still in the same mode that they are when they're in front of the Eiffel Tower, and they're just showing photos. They're just smiling right at Arbuckle Fry, right under the gates. They're smiling.
Yeah.
You're I don't know. I mean, can you really get mad at people for that? I mean, it seems ghoulish, but it's just
I don't judge. I mean, God bless them. They're there to have a good time, and I wasn't expecting it. You stagger in there, and you're thinking, I'm going to have an experience. I'm going to feel this depth of emotion. And the first thing you see is some mook in an I'm with stupid t-shirt eating a fold-over pizza at the snack bar. And it's like, then what? Where do you go with that?
There's another, not the death camp selfies, but there's been a couple good, one of which we talked about on the show, Holocaust memorial selfies in
nice.
Berlin.
Real.
Are you familiar with the former, I think he's still in the NBA, he was at the San Antonio Spurs at the time, the NBA player Danny Green.
Yes.
He got in trouble for this one. I think he had to take it down. He posted it on Facebook. It was him at the Holocaust memorial in Berlin, and he gave a selfie, but the text under it was, I had to do it to him one time, #Holocaust.
How can you get mad at the guy?
But back to the genesis of the trip. It's like you sort of you midway upon your journey through life, you found yourself in a dark forest.
I did. Me and Dante.
This was 2016, and it was a sort of a constellation of personal existential despair and a larger public crisis of Trump and let's just say fascism becoming en vogue in America, and you sought out a kind of a psychic geography or landscape that would match your own inner depression, and that was the Holocaust bus
so
tour.
Much more beautifully put than I could have. I didn't realize at the time it was going to be that way. Mind you, I went there in 2016, so I had a million hot takes about Trump and Hitler. Who knew Hitler was an ass clown too, and they thought they could just use him and make a lot of money, et cetera, et cetera. But it took me 3-4 years to write the fucking book. I just couldn't wrap my mind around it, whereupon it was 2021 already, so I had to sort of revise my thinking and look backward at Trump. Instead of the mystery of where we're going to go, it was, oh my God, we went there.
And one of the things you describe in opening the book is an astonishing description of an event was it Polish nude gas chamber tag?
Yes.
And this is some sort of Polish art installation where people were naked and playing tag in one of the gas chambers, and you thought, well, hey, I got to get down on that. This looks fun.
Yeah, I didn't, sadly, because I would have gone there. I mean, what the hell? The kind of journalism I've done over the years, some of it has involved nudity. I did a nude singles weekend at Elysium, which was this rustic resort in Topanga, wherein your genitalia sort of gently brushed the chicken salad as you were in line for the buffet. So I was ready, but sadly, they had discontinued the display, which was indeed an art piece, because, the Poles, they're way ahead of us in terms of avant-garde art. And, but yeah, it was nudes, and I was thinking how great it would have been had Trump himself gone naked. Footloose and testicle free, just flapping in fish scale white. But sadly, it was not to be. A guy can dream.
Yeah. So the organization that you contacted for putting together, this is a package deal, right? And this is a common thing. It's we'll get you on a bus, you're in a tour group, and we'll see all the death camps of Central Europe. There's a company called Globule.
That name has been changed to protect
okay.
It turns out, Will, there's this whole culture, which I didn't know about, wherein people who aren't rich, just regular folk, school teachers, janitors, a lot of this bulldozer driver, they want a vacation. They're not rich. So it's sort of this kind of middle class way of taking vacations. So it wasn't really about the camp so much as, last week we toured the Finger Lakes. Next week it's Ireland.
Yeah.
And in between, we're going to do the camps.
We're going to do Dachau.
And they just stay on the road and they love it.
But these package deals for middle class family, you want to have everything sort of set out for you. You don't have to think too much or worry about it. You want to see Europe. But again, I can imagine, we'll see the Colosseum. We'll eat at some of the best restaurants in Tuscany. We'll go around. But just the death camp thing. What struck me about it is how essentially non-ghoulish or like weird these people were. They were like, well, why are you interested in that? And like the common answer was, I saw a lot about World War II on the History Channel, or I learned about Jews from watching, the Hitler Network.
I saw Schindler's List.
Yeah, Schindler's List.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. And interestingly enough, speaking of Schindler's List, the tour guide told me that on the last tour she did, the people were more interested in going to the hotel where the stars of Schindler's List stayed than actual Schindler action.
They're like, yeah, Ben Kingsley slept here.
Yeah, and isn't that a fascinating getaway? So we didn't see the hotel, sadly, this time around, but we did go to the Schindler Museum, which I highly recommend.
I guess like the other thing that struck me about it, both like your tour group and like when you visit the actual camps themselves, the way they're run as museums, is I guess I was sort of surprised by how incredibly non-Jewish that everything was, both the people and like just the fact that like everything that you ate on this tour, including in the camps itself, were like pork sausage. I mean, you didn't, because you're a vegetarian.
I'm a healthy
just like
guy.
Hitler. Yeah,
me and Hitler. Vegetarian. I don't keep his injectable regimen. I mean, I think on a daily basis he showed up cocaine, morphine, heroin, amphetamine, and Bulgarian peasant stool. Which Dr. Morell thought really gave him that extra.
Okay, that was a detail that I did not know. I knew about his prodigious drug regimen, but like his doctors were injecting him with the fecal matter of Bulgarian peasants.
As one does.
Yeah, sure.
Because they have an incredible amount of vigor, and his doctor, Dr. Morell, thought this was just that extra little soupçon of something that he needed to sort of
that's what was keeping him
kick
up in
the
the
other
bunker,
stuff. Keep him up in the bunker.
Bring him down or up, or just to give him a kind of
I think it's
earthy vigor.
Earthy vigor is just ensure a smooth ride, and it varied from day to day. But look, I take no credit for discovering this. There's this amazing book and documentary called Blitzed.
Oh, it's a great book,
which I heartily recommend. Where I got all my Bulgarian peasant fecal matter info.
I feel like you made some friends with the people in your group.
Sure,
like this was
made some pals.
Yeah, but there was one Jewish guy though.
There was a Jewish guy, an older
and he was
fella.
actually like put in a displaced persons camp after World War II as a kid. So he'd actually sort of like kind of experienced just a little bit of this.
Yes, he was coming back to Poland for the first time. We'll call him Shlomo. He was a very Trump-loving Republican Jew because, as he said, the Bible predicted Trump. It was King Cyrus, the Persian king.
Sure.
And even though he was a bit of a rascal, like Trump, he was good for the Jews. So we became pals. I mean, what am I going to do? Arm wrestle the guy? You're not going to persuade somebody.
Aside from the essential like non-Jewish nature of like the entire experience, because you think like just the fact that you can eat pork sausages in the camps themselves, like that's basically what's pepperoni pizza, ham sandwiches, all of it.
It was neither kosher nor halal. At no end of the nutritional spectrum did they seem to care.
I guess just like, I mean, so much of the humor of the book, but also kind of the grotesquerie is just like how indistinguishable these which are really kind of should be like sacred, almost like just like profoundly like almost unspeakable places.
Yes.
Like I'd feel even coughing in there would be some sort of profound just offense to history, but just the astonishing rubery and just like yokeldom of all. It's like Disney World. Like it's insane. Like people wearing T-shirts that's like just I'll have beer please, or just like backwards hats and just like Like I'm not the most like prudish or like enforcing standards or codes of behavior. Yeah, but I mean like, were you expecting that or like
I First of all, I didn't know what to expect. But the last thing I expected, as I say, was that. And also, there's the unavoidable reality that being a human being, or a human of a certain age, I wanted to have this experience, but the first thing I did when I got to the camp, like shot out of a fucking cannon, was get to the men's room. Whereupon I met a really interesting character who is the Dachau crapper. I mean, in this case, the Auschwitz crapper hand. Who apparently he was a third, fourth generation bathroom attendant. And you just have to say to yourself, well, this guy wouldn't have a job if it weren't for the Holocaust. And I didn't know whether you paid your zloty, which is the Burt Young of currency, just this worthless and kind of crumply, ugly money. If you paid on the way, I paid twice because I'm kind of a candy ass.
Right.
And then I was pee shy because I was intimidated by the ghost of my dead, families. And so that's how that went. I thought you should suffer. You should be uncomfortable.
But like, a lot of it is you have like, sort of communing with your family history, like being like, Jew born in America.
Sure.
And then like you go to Poland and there's a line you write in the book where you're like, as an American Jew in Poland, paranoia doesn't feel like paranoia. It feels like gravity. And like, could you describe like Poland's very weird relationship with Jews? Because it's sort of like, I don't know, I describe it as almost like the Cleveland Indians baseball team. Like they've obviously done a lot of pogroms and massacres to Jewish people.
Very much so.
But they sort of like them. It's just sort of like they become sort of a cute mascot for the Polish people.
There is, speaking of mascots, exactly, there are what they call little Jews, which are little wooden Jews, which are basically like rabbinical-looking, bearded, Jewy old dudes with a coin that they're holding, and they're considered good luck. And they say a Jew in the home means money is coming. And it's sort of like a lawn jockey, but for Jews. And there are actually, fun fact, there's now more wooden Jews than actual Jews in Poland. And the other odd fact about Poland, if anyone so much as implies that the Poles had anything to do with participation in the Holocaust, you're going to jail.
Yeah.
And not just Jew jail. You're going to jail.
Yeah.
And so that's their relationship. But on a personal level, I mean, I won't lie.
The little Jew trinkets.
Sure.
These are not like,
I wish I could have brought you one.
Yeah.
But they're great.
I would love a coin in my pocket.
Well, they're great stocking stuffers. Let's not kid ourselves.
But they're not like Der Stürmer cartoon depictions.
No,
Jews. It's a little
borderline.
bit. Does it just sort of skirts the boundary a little bit?
Yeah. Well, they're classily done. I'm not going to lie. They're about 6 inches and hand carved from linden tree, which is very popular in Poland. And, but the thing for me, you mentioned the paranoia is like gravity. When you're like in a hotel coffee shop in the morning and some old fuck is over there like sausage gobbling, just giving you complete stink eye. It's some 95-year-old bastard. And you're just thinking, there's no way that like 60 years ago, this guy wasn't tossing Jew babies up in the air and bayoneting them for fun, and the way he's looking at you, it's like, I know what he's thinking.
Yeah.
He's thinking, I could have had you, man. But I can't prove it. But that was my just nonstop sense of dread and paranoia.
And well, you got into it with some Polish neo-Nazis in a McDonald's, and your friend, the elderly Jewish gentleman. He knew what to do. I mean, he lived through it.
Stepped up. Yeah. He knew some insults were like, something the Polish equivalent of like soggy piss cake. I can't even begin to translate. But they stepped up. I was taking a picture at a McDonald's of these guys in the green eagle outfit, which I thought was some soccer team. Turns out to this neo-Nazi fascist
Well, in
group.
Europe, it's like soccer team / neo-Nazi group. It's sort of a Venn diagram. It's
I know.
You
don't even need to slash.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no difference. They bleed into one another. So he resented the fact that I was taking pictures of him. And I tried to explain like a complete candy ass, basically, that this is my job. I go around taking pictures of McDonald's and you shouldn't be pissed at me. This is my job. He didn't buy it. And he tried to back me down and he did one of those chest bumps and the other guys called me Juden, which is a first.
Sure.
Never been called Juden before. And Shlomo stepped up and said something I can only guess was completely withering in Polish. And they backed off and he kind of, this little bald guy in mom jeans, like, just about like an inch below the
over the navel.
He was great, with the crease, the whole thing. He saved my bacon.
That's great.
Literally.
The other astonishing part of the book when you visit Auschwitz, I cannot believe this. Like, so you're in the gas chamber, which is like, describe that feeling. Like, I mean, I've never experienced it, but like, I can just imagine it. Like, what is it like to like when you walk in there?
There is the silence of a million deaths. You just hear the absence of sound. And for me, it was as close, I'm going to say a holy moment, but I think I felt something or would have.
Well, but you encountered a Holocaust hipster.
Yes.
In the gas chamber. And it's just some fucking loudmouth who immediately just starts spouting off about how this isn't authentic. And now when I was really reading this, I was like, holy shit, is this like a Holocaust denier who goes on Holocaust tours and like points out the inaccuracy? Oh, well, actually, like, they couldn't have killed a million people in these ovens or whatever. But no, this guy was like a Holocaust purist. He wanted everyone to know that this wasn't the real deal.
This wasn't the original.
It had been like retrofitted or remade in some way.
It had been kind of remade because it was crumbling. And so for him, it was not real. And what can I say? There were scratches on the wall, which I just found chilling to my core. But he's like, nah, they made those.
Right.
They just did that. So like idiots like you would buy the experience, you know?
So like, well, then why is he on the tour?
Exactly.
If he knows this inauthentic.
He's basically harshing my Holocaust mellow right there.
Yeah.
And I wasn't appreciative of that. And he was bickering with his girlfriend, who's like, would you just shut up? So they were having, I don't know if they were newlyweds, but they were bickering like they were together. They were stuck together. And she wasn't really into his denialism.
Now, I mean, like, did you encounter, like, writing the book or researching it, or even just, in your personal life, some of the more standard, like, Holocaust denial tropes? And actually, now that I can ask you, you have been to all these death camps. Did the Holocaust happen?
I'm going to go out on a limb. I think it absolutely happened. And I think the miracle, as I say towards the end of the book, is it's always happening somewhere.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the world, the axe is always falling. So you might as well be grateful. My message of hope, because that's me, is that it's not falling on you right now.
Just like Holocaust denialism is such an interesting thing. Because I mean, like, okay, you were now such. Have you heard the classic about the swimming pool at Auschwitz?
Yes.
Okay,
of course.
so yeah, there is a swimming pool at Auschwitz, but
sure.
they weren't letting prisoners just take a dip or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, Auschwitz, it's a huge facility. I mean, there's people had their kids there. There were kids there, but I'm talking about the commandants of the camp and stuff. Yeah,
it was like a lovely neighborhood. Right over the wall was Commandant Huss, H-O umlaut S-S, had his family there. And it was lovely. And even as you go into the town, I'm not even going to attempt. It's like Osweecum. I can't pronounce it. It's just a fucking gingerbreadville.
Yeah.
It's so quaint and lovely. And apparently, back in the day when this was all happening, they didn't really know what was going on. They just knew there was this kind of dingy quality to the white sheets that they would hang out to dry, from the Jew flakes that were raining down.
But when you encounter like people who are strident that like the Holocaust didn't happen or it did happen, but it wasn't 6 million Jews who died in it. It's just like it's this perfect kind of paradox, because I think the standard thing is the Holocaust didn't happen, or it didn't happen in the way history teaches us, but if it did, that would be good and in fact preferable to it not happening.
Yeah.
So so why deny it?
It becomes a numbers game
Jews,
for these people.
You'd be proud of it.
I know. That's a very, very good point. And Commandant Hess on that tip complains how hard it was to keep up the numbers that those in command, Himmler wanted, his quota, and he was rushing them through, but it takes a certain amount of time. You can't just burn them.
Well, I mean, you said in the book, it's one of the many very, very gruesome and chilling details in the book is him complaining well, I mean, we can gas them by the thousands. That's easy. But cremating the bodies, that's the hard part. You have to work. You quote from the diaries or first-person sources of the what is it called, the Sauna Commandos?
Yes, Sauna Commandos.
Sauna Commandos.
Those
these are the Jews who were tasked with running the ovens.
Yeah,
and they would just get bodies after thousands of bodies every day, in and out, working 12-hour shifts day and night, round the clock, to keep it going. And this has been a trope of Holocaust denialism too. The idea that the size of the ovens is they couldn't have burned that many bodies in that many times. Yeah. And then very easily dispatched by the guy just saying, oh, well, we were working 24 hours a day. There were 2 shifts.
Yeah.
So maybe if we were only working a nice 8-hour day, clock in, clock out, the numbers wouldn't add up. But
yeah, clearly they had specialists in to figure this out. And what happened at Dachau towards the end is they ran out of fuel. So they would just throw the bodies on the fucking ground, which is why when the troops came in to liberate them, they were just so horrified and traumatized because these bodies were just, we see these pictures, but if you can imagine the stench and the reality of just these endless piles of bodies, I mean, it's hard not to sympathize.
So then so you're communing with this unspeakable horror, the limits of what human beings are capable of doing, capable of enduring and capable of doing to each other. But all of this exists side by side with this the same touristy kitsch that you encounter everywhere else in Europe as a tourist. So what are some examples of some stuff that in the gift shop of one of the of Buchenwald? or Auschwitz.
Well, I'm not going to say they had the, I went to Auschwitz and all I got was a stupid T-shirt. I looked, But what was interesting, for example, this might not qualify as kitsch, but like the books they chose to have.
Okay, the book section was really funny. You could go up so they have the obvious books on the Holocaust, right?
They have the books on the Holocaust.
On
sure,
Blu-ray.
the standards. Yeah, your Schindler. Your Viktor Frankl.
Yeah. Primo Levi. Any Primo Levi there?
Primo, sure. And Primo Levi, like Tadeusz Borowski, whose name I can never pronounce, is a great writer, just a side note, who survived the Holocaust and subsequently hurled himself down the steps in Turin and killed himself.
Yeah.
Just like Borowski killed himself, which is
and that was in the 80s. That was like 1981, I think.
These people made it out and then couldn't deal for whatever reason. Or as he said, the best people were not the people who survived.
Yeah.
Which, forgive me, that's a side note.
Yeah, no, but I mean, one of the statistics you say about Auschwitz is like, I think out of like the 1.5 million people who were killed there, only 60,000 survived it.
Yeah.
And Primo Levi being one of them, only to kill himself in I'm kind of haunted by a lifelong depression as well,
Yeah.
So like back to the
Yes,
books
of course.
in the gift shop though.
Yeah, back to the books. It's almost like the books they had were Philip Roth, Woody Allen,
Okay.
and Sigmund Freud.
Okay, I'm sensing a theme here. So not any of Woody's Holocaust related literature.
Well, it's hard to
Poetry.
say.
Yeah.
I didn't leaf through. I don't know if it was Without Feathers. I don't remember the exact one. But it is interesting. It's almost like they thought, these Jews, they're kind of yuck hucksters.
Yeah.
There's some real chuckleheads. There's some laughs. They were funny. Who knew? So they had some of those kind of books.
And I got to bring it up because it was another one of the funniest parts of the book. But you're sort of the day before you go to Auschwitz, you seek an encounter, an online encounter with a sort of a European kink site.
Wow.
And it was just first of all, like how would you describe the kinks of Europe? And also as a side question, why was shit eating so popular among the leaders of the Third Reich?
The eternal question. It is the eternal question. And what did that do to Ava's breath? But there is a site, something on the order, I think it's like alterna.com, something like that. And what it is, it's not even just European, it's all over the world. And they divide the patrons, customers, enthusiasts, ecstatics into groups of, there's the humiliation seekers. Mm-hmm. There's the humiliation givers, the smack and the smacky, and there's the pony play, and there's the coprophagia, which is ever popular. And I thought it would be interesting to go around from district to district and find out, like, gee, I wonder if the locals near Auschwitz were more pony players or more shit munchers. Sadly, in Poland, they did not break them into groups, as if they knew someone might come looking. But it is an interesting question because, according to all accounts, Hitler liked his stool, and Eva ever liked to comply. It was like pre-Danny Palmas. This is like pre-plate job, minus the plate. There was no plate.
But was it you encountered someone who was into a certain kind of verbal abuse?
Well, I didn't realize it just by being on there. I think I was like, what was I? I was like Mean Daddy 50 or something like that. And somebody, the night before, I'm in this hotel in Poland, and it's like somebody DMs me. I think she was like special needs or something like that. Special care, something, ominous. And she wanted me to like spank her dirty vagina.
But she used she coined the term that I've never heard, but Jewgina.
Jewgina.
She wanted you to slap her dirty Jewgina.
Slap her dirty Jewgina. And I'm like, all right, who am I to deny? I'm like, okay, slap. I'm hitting your dirty.
It's all over text, right?
Yeah, it's all over text. I'm sitting, God, I can't sleep. And this is weird, always say yes. So I went along, and it was like slap. And then I think I said something like, I'm going to hurt your filthy Jew hole. And she's like, that's disgusting. So she preferred
People have
Jujina.
like people in, the kink thing is like you don't want to develop too specific of a kink,
Listen, I was out of my depth, and if anyone's offended by this, apologies. I was just trying to play by the rules of the game.
Well, I mean, so much of the book is defined by this real gallows humor, and this is the biggest gallows on the planet.
It is the biggest gallows, but it's very important because it was kind of a tightrope, but the humor was all about the sort of extra stuff. Obviously, it's not about the camps, but it's about the snack bar and the people going and there were skinheads at Dachau, which was very weird, who were like clomping around in their monstrous fucking hobnail boots, short black pants, and snug t-shirts. And for them, it was a fun outing. And the people, nobody judged, nobody threw them out. So who's to say? I think you bring to the Holocaust what you bring to the Holocaust.
And what did you feel you brought to the Holocaust? Because loading back onto that tour bus is like everyone else is just like they've just seen like a Roman baths or something, and they're like, okay, on to the next site. But does it drain you?
Question. Well, I bring what I pretty much bring anywhere. I mean, I had like the self-loathing, the regret, the what the fuck am I doing? How did I end up here? But what occurred to me, what I was very curious about, I don't know if you've ever thought this, was how soon did the people who were at this site able to shed, when did they sort of transition from worrying about this every day, the minutiae of their horror and their dread, and their ambition and their love life and money, to just trying to survive?
Mm-hmm.
And, for me, in the second part of the book, I had there's a side story, which is I had sold this book, OG Dad, that I'd written, and ABC bought it. They never read the book. It was about the hijinks that ensue when an older father, I have a kid and I marry somebody younger, but they never read the book. And it was very dark. So they heard me on Marin, because why read the book when you can podcast?
Right.
So long story short, they hated everything about it, and I was trying to give them a treatment, which for the 10 people not in show business in the audience, which is a description of what you're going to write when you write before they tell you not to write it because it's not what they want you to write. So long story short, I'm getting phone messages, and I make the mistake as I'm just sort of slogging my way out of, I think it was at Dachau where they would hang you in front of the oven just to torture you. So they would hang you so you could watch as you're being hung what was going to happen to your body. So this happens, and then I'm walking out and I get a call, and I make the mistake of listening to the message, and it's like this, I just call him a sensitive exec. I won't name his name, from ABC. And it was like, can you make Jerry less creepy? So I'm getting this text,
this is worse than getting a call from your mom if you're on acid and picking up the phone,
but on a par.
Yeah.
Because not unlike that situation, it's like, why the fuck did I answer the phone?
Yeah.
But I did, because there's a part of you thinks, maybe this is the call that will change everything.
Yeah.
And it was just a horror show, and I hated myself all over the place. And I couldn't help but think, if I were in an office, I would have that experience, which is they don't just reject you, they spray the couch cushions with Lysol.
They open up the windows, get the
what
stink
fuck?
out. Yeah.
But at all, I had that moment where of course I was thinking about Jerry Lewis.
Yeah.
The day the clown cried.
Sure, yeah.
But
have you seen that movie, by the way?
No, I went to a reading of it at Largo, which was fantastic.
I've never seen that. I mean, it's embargoed. Yeah. It's not going to be.
It will never be seen.
The Kennedy papers are going to get released before that.
A great thing about Jerry Lewis, which is why I love him, needless to say, is that he would do this thing every time he had a meeting. He would bring an attaché case, and then he would leave it there. And what it was secretly a tape recorder.
Oh wow!
So he would forget his tape recorder,
and then he would get the real dope on,
and then he would hear what they thought about him.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of nah, that is the last thing I would want. I mean, I'm hearing the message and I want to fucking, take my brain out and throw it and, spray it with Raid.
like the Holocaust has such is a huge part of like America's self mythos. Is like a lot of people think like, oh, like we entered World War II to end the Holocaust. And
So
like,
not true.
yeah, which is completely yeah.
So not
But
true.
like most Americans didn't even really know what the final solution or the Holocaust or what the death camps were until like the 70s, until it became part of like the public school curriculum. But like, how do you think present day Americans view the Holocaust versus like present day Europeans?
Interesting question. I'll just tell you, for me, I thought I was going to visit the past.
Mm-hmm.
And I came back with the sense that I was visiting the future, because, not to put too fine a point on it or be too dramatic, I think it's just a matter of time before you look out your window and it's like, gee, why are they taking Bob? Why are they taking my neighbor? Just, I think we'll start with the special hats. We'll start with the equivalent of the yellow star, and we'll have jackets. And it's going to happen. I think for an American, as well as for a lot of Europeans, I think they feel that this is in the mail. Absolutely, it's going to happen again. Maybe not in the exact same form, because we can streamline, our industry has developed since then. But we can microwave now.
But like the Europeans, like, did they not like being made to feel guilty over the Holocaust, about like, or sort of letting it happen or participating in it happening? Did they have sort of a chip on their shoulder of that? Whereas Americans have the opposite, where they think like, oh, we're the only thing stopping a billion Holocausts from happening, and we stopped the original one from happening too.
Sure,
we loved talking about the Holocaust.
Sure,
who's responsible for
it's like Voltaire said, self-delusion is the key to happiness, and that is the American delusion. In Europe, interestingly enough, everybody feels like the victim.
Yeah.
The French, who like caved in 5 minutes and like instantly sent off every Jew in Paris, they felt like victims. The Poles felt like the Germans came in and overtook them, when in reality, of course, they collaborated, because why wouldn't they? Money to be made.
I mean, there was the uprisings. There was a Polish resistance. I mean, like millions of Poles died
absolutely,
during World War
and there was a French resistance too. Now, you cannot deny the bravery of the resistance fighters, absolutely. But the very fact that it was an underground resistance tells you that in the main, the government, whether it was Vichy or the Poles, were going along. And of course, no one in Germany knew what was happening. Nobody knew what was happening.
And I guess like another part about like the Holocaust being such a big part of America's self mythology is due to like the entertainment industry. So I mean, like, do you have feelings like how does Hollywood and like movies like how is the Holocaust important to Hollywood and like just sort of the American like myth making factory?
Well, I think it's important on a lot of levels. I mean, on the specific, and some might say petty, there's the fact that Hugo Boss designed the SS uniforms.
Right.
So every rich Hollywood young man getting bar mitzvah is wearing his Hugo Boss bar mitzvah suit, designed, of course, by Hugo Boss. So there's that. On another level, I think the message in Schindler, and why so many people, like, I love the guy who wrote the movie, and I know him, and he's great, but the fact is that Liam Neeson had to come in there, this big, burly hunk of a Christian, and save the Jews. Once again, because the Jews had no agency, were just little squirrely people who need saved by big hunky Christians.
I mean, it could be apocryphal, but I mean, I remember reading that Stanley Kubrick apparently spent a good chunk of his career like agonizing over how to do a movie on the Holocaust, and he concluded that he couldn't. It was impossible. And he said of Schindler's List, Schindler's List is not a movie about the Holocaust. Schindler's List is about 800 people who lived. The Holocaust is about the millions who died.
What a great quote.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
I mean, like I said,
one more reason
it could be
to love
apocryphal.
Kubrick.
Yeah.
No, it makes
the
perfect.
master. Yeah,
it sounds like the kind of thing he would say. Of course, I mean, he was a guy who knew how to take humor from the complete tragedy
of existence. Yeah. And I mean, that's really what you're doing with this book. So I mean, like, when you came to the end of the tour, like, I mean. Yeah, the book ends with your very very optimistic
of sorts
prescription that like it just if in between chops of the axe is like the axe is coming, but like living in between strokes of it.
It's it has been called optimistic. To me at the time, it was the bleakest fucking thing you could say, which is we're all going to be pushed into the oven soon enough. But since it's not happening now, enjoy the fresh air.
But did going on the worst vacation ever and like communing psychically with like the bleakest, darkest parts of humanity, did that help with your own depression or sense of self?
On a certain level, it can't help but put a little spring in your step when you realize, well, this isn't happening to me yet. So it ended up being a positive. I mean, I don't know that I'm going to start a psychoanalytic movement wherein we ship depressos to the camps so that they can learn to be jolly. Yeah, but hey, it worked for me.
Yeah, okay. And you said you took you a lot of the way, but like, in 2016 it was you had a an unsure feeling about where this might be going with Trump, but then by 2021 you have the benefit of hindsight. You saw what happened. So like how do you regard like Trump and the kind of like nascent like American nationalist movement that is sort of a fascism has a sort of a little was it notes of fascism, or is this just outright fascism to you?
Oh, I think we've entered into outright, but Trump's like the dumb Hitler. Hitler had, like him or not, he had a couple of good ideas until the peasant stool and morphine kind of dragged him down. But Trump is he's a manipulator. He knows how to survive. He's the perpetual cornered rat, and there's nobody smarter in the short term. In the long term, I think he's just trying to survive another day. What about you?
I mean, it's certainly the problem is like when I think about this is that like fascism like as it existed in Europe in like the 1930s and 40s like requires it's a mass politics. It requires like a mass politics and the engagement of like millions of like politicized active people.
Yes,
it's hard for me to imagine that being repeated either from the right or the left in America, because like our culture and like politics is so deeply. It's hard for me to imagine a mass movement for good or bad arising out of contemporary America. But it is unmistakable that like the notes of, shall we say, like violent right wing politics of a certain flavor that got popular in Europe is there are people who consciously or unconsciously, I think they get a certain thrill out of toying with that, or toying with the imagery or the aesthetics of like classic European fascism. Like where it's going to lead, it's hard to know. But like, I mean, I think it's very clear that like, like vulnerable minority groups, like people who feel weak, I think very clearly like want to make themselves feel powerful by this kind of like fantasy or even reality of rounding people up, or just punishing, or like immiserating, or then eventually like pushing to like down this like ladder, this staircase that ends with the ovens. And so for someone or some group of people, I don't know.
I think that's very well put. And now we're seeing, as this was being taped, our very own like Night of the Long Knives, wherein the super right wing want to fucking take out the FBI.
Right.
And who would have thunk it? The Republicans who were, back in the blue. So I do believe.
Well, they back the blue, but like federal law enforcement has long been. I mean, I don't see the hypocrisy there, because like ever since,
true.
Like Ruby Ridge, like federal law enforcement has always been kind of seen among the far right as like fundamentally illegitimate. Like the posse comitatus, like the only like the highest level authority is like local sheriffs, and anything above that is unconstitutional.
So true, but they did kind of dip into beating up the blue on January 6th.
That's true, yeah.
Not to get petty. So I think both things can be true. And if I understand what you're saying, it's almost like we're just too fucking lazy for a mass movement.
Yeah, I think so.
Which I think there's a certain truth to that. But I do believe as Trump sees his power slipping, the last thing he has are the MAGA freaks.
Well, they're already doing suicide attacks on the FBI offices and stuff.
Yeah, they've gone full Yukio Mishima, except they're not doing seppuku like on the steps of the Pentagon. They're just hurling themselves at like FBI offices. But I think you're going to see more and more in that. And I also think more and more Jews are going to be attacked. I mean, I don't know. I'm always kind of paranoid because I grew up like the only Jewish kid in a school of 800. And
you grew up in Pittsburgh, right?
I grew, not to brag, but the particular school I went to, I was the only Jew. And, I was always accused of killing Jesus, which I, clearly must have done in a blackout when I was like 5 because I had no fucking memory. And, that stays with you.
So I just want to like, we mentioned it before. I just want to read like sort of from the end of the book. You say, you write at the end, your sort of concluding remarks, call it the redemption of the living by the dead. That is the gift. That is the horror. That in the end is the only reality that matters. My message of hope and obligatory, if questionably redemptive anti-depression is that the Holocaust was not an exception. It is the time in between Holocausts that it is the exception. So savor these moments, be grateful, even if the axe is always falling.
Call me a cockeyed optimist. I mean, oddly enough, in reviews and such, people have called that hopeful. I think it's bleak as fuck.
Yeah.
Because what you're saying is, no matter what, the axe is falling. So, hey, make hay.
Have you gotten any pushback or any criticism about the idea that you're sort of like profaning the Holocaust, or that you're making too light of it, or that the humor and absurdity of it is sort of does a disservice? Because there are many descriptions in the book that are quite horrific of like actual facts of like how the Holocaust was carried out, or like Dr. Mengele's experiments and stuff like that. Like, but have you gotten any like from the Jewish community or otherwise about being insensitive or sort of too insouciant with how you deal with the material?
Again, a great question. I did another book called Painkillers, which with the genius Larry Charles, we tried to do it as a kind of a buddy thing, where one of the buddies was Joseph Mengele. So we anticipated some pushback on that. Never happened, sadly. With this book, I think the heart of it is that it's not anything about the Holocaust, which is nothing but tragic and terrifying and pretentious. It's really about the trappings. It's not the turkey, it's the garnish, which I believe is a saying in Pennsylvania Dutch country, though it might be ham. So I don't know. I haven't gotten any pushback. And weirdly enough, most of the people who have reviewed it have been Jewish magazines or Jewish newspapers. And I've never been covered by these people in my life. And somehow, and even appeared in the Jerusalem Post, not to brag, and somehow
any fascist newspapers or magazines have reviewed this yet?
I'm waiting. I haven't gone on Gab. I don't know if it's been reviewed on there, but or what is it? Truth Social.
Truth Social, yeah.
Truth Social. I'll check my account. See if I got any dings. But so far I think people have understood what the book is about. And of course, it was a risky venture, but it seemed some books you just have to write, and this was one of them.
I guess, like, as like you said, you grew up as like the only Jewish kid in your school in Pittsburgh, and it's just like I don't know, like you have a family history of like fleeing pogroms. Like my father's parents and my father's father, like his family, they all fled Russia to avoid conscription in the Tsarist army.
Same with my grandfather, fled conscription in the Tsarist army.
And
very same history.
This sense of like there's always a kind of sense of paranoia, like I guess growing up.
Does that make you half a Jew?
Yeah, technically. No, actually, no. It makes me 1/4 of a Jew, but on the wrong side because it was his dad's side.
That'd kill you anyway, man.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, actually, one time I grew up in the Upper West Side.
I'm sorry I outed you.
Yeah, I grew up in the Upper West Side, and one time I was walking down the street with my dad, who is a half Jewish himself, but is very visibly Jewish. And we were approached by the
nicely put
the mitzvah mobile.
Oh my God!
The people they try to approach Jews and get them to be more Jewish, and they approach you on the street and they go, "Excuse me, sir, like, you mind my asking, are you Jewish?" And it was one of the most proud moments of my life with my dad, where he goes, "Oh, like, a little bit. I'm half Jewish." And the guy goes, "Oh, well, if you don't mind my asking, what side?" And he goes, "I'm Jewish on my dad's side." And he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, but we're only interested in." And if your mother was Jewish, my dad just, without missing a beat, just looks at him and goes, "Buddy, if it was good enough for Hitler, it should be good enough for you." but yeah, I guess like just in terms of like
that's good.
The relationships, like the Jewish American life and this like idea of the Holocaust is like this idea that it's always out there, and it's always defining you in some way, or it's always like worried that it might happen. But like in terms of like an American Jewish sense of self, like for you personally, like how much is the kind of the gallows humor of it is really like the meaning of it. Like when confronted with the most unimaginable thing possible, what else do we really have but to laugh?
Of course. And, well-known fact, I'm not coming up with this. Oppressed people are generally the funniest people.
Yeah.
And there is also the fact, which my grandfather, the one who avoided conscription in the Tsar's army, would always say, if you ever forget you're a Jew, a Gentile will remind you.
Right.
Which I think has never been more apt now, because people aren't afraid, thanks to Trump and company, people aren't afraid to express, this shit's always been there, but they're not afraid now to just show it.
And like, is it a way of like, I don't want to say like, oh, like, comedy or writing is going to save the world, but is it a way to like sort of undermine the evil of this, or just to notice it, or at least just diffuse its own hold over one's own psyche?
You're an artist yourself, so that when you write or paint or whatever, you don't always know what the fuck you're doing when you're doing it. So I think the answer to that is yes, absolutely, but not consciously.
Right.
I think I was diffusing it. And also, because there's nothing funnier than these assholes, but there's also nothing scarier.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of a Mobius strip where you're always flipping from one to the other simultaneously.
Well, I think as James Joyce said, history is a nightmare that we are all trying to stop laughing about. Something like that, yeah. I think. Jerry Stahl, I want to thank you so much for joining us. The book is 999. It is incredibly funny and, like I said, incredibly dark. But if you're a fan of Jerry Stahl, you'll know what to expect. But if you're not, this is the chance to get on board. Get on board now, the Jerry Stahl train.
Thanks, man. I'm a huge fan. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, by the way, one last thing. Did you attempt to play Pokemon Go in Auschwitz, or did they shut that down?
You're throwing me a softball here, but they did have a sign, no Pokemon.
So did any Pokemon die in the Holocaust? That's an important question.
Apparently, 2 did. But they're keeping it under wraps.
Yeah, it was
I'm not
Squirtle,
at liberty to say.
Was it Charizard? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Jerry Stahl, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, man.